We have not yet broken down QBs. We've got a half hour ahead of us, some runway to do that. So let's get it going right now on the Fan.
The offseason is here for the Washington Commanders. Grant and Danny go position by position and break down the Commanders roster ahead of free agency and the draft. It's Position Group A Day with Grant and Danny.
The question when it comes to the quarterback position here is very simple. Do you trust that Jayden Daniels can be a durable, reliable, week in and week out starter? That was the knock before the draft. Fair or not, people thought mostly it wasn't. After year one, I basically said, I'm ready to put that away. My concerns, be damned. He made all the starts. I thought he probably should have missed about a month.
Yeah, took some shots here and there, had played with a broken rib. Early on, you're going, oh my God, his helmet's twisted. Oh my God, he folded like a chair. Oh my God, this is so bad. But he kept popping up.
Played.
Until he didn't this year.
Played in every single game. And he was durable enough and got better as the year went on. And then eventually finished stronger than he started with a couple of unbelievable performances and playoff wins and a strong performance in the NFC Championship game blowout loss when Washington gave up 55 points. But that brings us to this year, and it was the opposite of that. Every single week, it seemed like he would be coming back from an injury. We wouldn't know if he was going to be able to practice or not. Then he would play and he wouldn't finish the game. Or just 4 times, I think, all year, he started and finished the game without any issues. And the entire season was a debacle in terms of his health. And it was the biggest reason for the regression as a team. So that's where the question begins, I think. And we can open up the phones at 800-636-1067. Because unlike other position groups we break down, there's one starter, you need a backup, you need a third quarterback. The backup is in flux. Marcus Mariota may or may not be back. If I'm them, I'm trying to bring him back. I think he's a really, really good second quarterback option. There was this fear that maybe you'd lose Marcus Mariota to wherever Cliff Kingsbury went, where Kingsbury was going to be your coordinator in another building or a head coach possibly. Well, it doesn't look he's getting a job. So that's one less coach for Mariota to follow. So maybe the likeliness he comes back as QB2 goes up. Josh Johnson's about 40 years old. I'm really not overly interested in him being the third quarterback. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but it's unnecessary. There are guys like Jeff Driscoll, as we found out at the end of the year, that are a phone call away, that are younger and every bit as capable. And then you still fairly inexplicably have Sam Hartman in the building. And I say that because when it came time to have a third quarterback and to activate a guy, you didn't want to take him off the practice squad to do it. You didn't ever want to allow him to be the backup quarterback or even give him a start at the end of the year when Johnson and Driscoll were dressing. So having him around, other than just as Jayden's buddy, makes no sense to me. If that's the case, make him your assistant quarterbacks coach and just keep it moving if you don't think he can play in the league.
Indeed, that was not my favorite sequence there. Of course, they win that meaningless game, and we all kind of know the story there. But yeah, that is a puzzling set of behaviors, right? Where it was well, we obviously can't play him. Well, if you can't play him, then can you employ him? But I guess if it's 72 and sunny and you don't worry about injury, which they shouldn't, by the way, but let's say you don't, then I guess it makes perfect sense. He's great in the film room. He's a good buddy to have around. He travels well on the road together, and everyone has singing Kumbaya. But if what happens to a lot of teams happens to you, and it happened to you this past year, where somebody might have to play, and you go, is Jeff Driscoll available? Is this 38-year-old available? Is another journeyman Jerry that one time met David Blau in the airport available, other than play him? Then you kind of have your own answer.
I do want to get back to Jayden Daniels in a second, for the record, because I think that's where the conversation should mostly be centered. But while we're just talking about the quarterback room on this position group a day breakdown, Marcus Mariota, I think, was a really good fit with Cliff Kingsbury. You know that he loved Cliff's offense, and again, he was going to follow him. But he also was a really good fit schematically. If they're going in a different direction, I'm not so sure that he is a necessity to have as your backup quarterback. In other words, if they're going with a more Clint Kubiak, watch Seattle, Josh McDaniels, watch New England, Shanahan-esque offense, under center, play action, boot, middle of the field throws, crossers, daggers, dig routes. That's not really Mariota's strength either. Mariota was the perfect person, I think, for what they were doing. But if they're going away from that a little bit and we're going, let's see how Jayden fits, let's see how he likes being under center, hasn't done it a whole lot, can he run this? And my answer to all those things are yes, he's talented enough, he's skilled enough, he's accurate enough, he's good enough passer that he can run all this stuff. I think you can say some of the same stuff about Marcus Mariota, honestly. So whereas in the past it's been this no-brainer, like just bring him back, don't ask any questions, there's probably a pocket passing, under center, play action boot type quarterback that might actually be an asset to Jayden Daniels in this transition, who's been in Detroit or Chicago or one of these other places. And I would actually look at doing that, possibly. If they want to bring Mariota back, no problem. But it would not surprise me at all if Mariota goes elsewhere because they're changing offenses, and they went with a more traditional fit veteran like Mariota was in the Cliff offense.
That had been part of the Shanahan tree has been part of the Kevin O'Connell extension. They might be able to talk about this a little bit more and be
Someone
more comfortable
that reminds
with it.
David Blau of himself.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. But in terms of Mariota, in general, that's what I would try to do for a backup quarterback. Now, it maybe gets too expensive. You have to move on, no problem. We could say fairly well, you did great here. But I want over 16 games, it's not going to work. But over 2 or over a quarter, where you can run around and make some backyard football plays every once in a while, the YOLO stuff, where I can't remember what I'm supposed to do for a read, and I've been sitting here for 3 quarters, but whatever, let me just sprint out of the pocket and see if I can make a play. That works in short-term bursts like that for a backup quarterback. So I'd love to have Mariota back, but totally understand if it gets too rich for their blood, and your alternate plan, to me, is just as good. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's a Tyrod Taylor situation. I don't know exactly who they'll unearth there in terms of a backup quarterback. But you're right. Having that room cohesive and try to recreate a little bit what you did in year one would make some sense.
If you guys want to hop in, 800-636-1067 is the number on Grant and Danny. That's 800-636-1067. Back to Jayden Daniels. The number one question is the durability, your confidence, and just how you feel about him being healthy. But that can't be the only discussion. I often hear it said when talking about Daniels in Washington in this market, like, well, if he plays, then all the problems go away. And I think to some extent that is true. A lot of them do. If he plays, like I say right now, if Jayden Daniels plays 17 times next year, the floor is pretty high for this team. What does that look like? It's probably 7-8 wins instead of the debacle of a year that just happened, that fiasco. But it doesn't mean you're just back in the playoffs. It doesn't mean you're just in the conference championship game mix. See, the narrative last year was we got our Mount Rushmore quarterback like Burrow, like Jackson, like Allen, like Mahomes. And when you have these guys every year, you're in the conversation, you're in the mix. We can't talk about it like that anymore. We have to take a year off from whatever that was. Now, maybe we get back there when he's healthy and he plays his butt off this coming year, and we could say that next offseason. I'm not above doing that. But that's certainly how he felt last year. But I think we have to be real about the performance when he was on the field, too. There are things to clean up. I think if Dan Quinn and Adam Peters felt like Jayden Daniels' development was on the right trajectory, or like he was making strides in the areas that were necessary, they probably wouldn't have changed coordinators. I think if they liked the direction he was heading, they wouldn't have blown out key pieces of the offensive staff.
I agree.
In 2024, among 36 qualifying quarterbacks, he was 6th in EPA per dropback, 10th in completion percentage over expected, one of my favorite stats, 14th in yards per attempt, and 4th in QBR. 6th, 10th, 14th, and 4th. This past season in 2025, in those same stats, among 42 qualified quarterbacks, he was 29th in EPA per dropback, 32nd in completion percentage over expected, 28th in yards per attempt, and 29th in QBR. So I'm not sitting here pretending as though Jayden Daniels is not a franchise quarterback or isn't the guy. I think he's both of those things. But if we're not going to have a real conversation that, based on coaching, based on play calling, based on situational football and everything around him, and his own performance, he's going to have to get back to playing at a much higher level or else they're in trouble. Then if we can't have that conversation, then we're doing a disservice to the whole operation.
So to me, I think they messed up in year one and he made everything okay. There was not enough talent around him on offense, enough meaningful talent. There was not enough easy on that offense. Their easy button was Eckler going for 12 yards on a screen. Everything else was a rock fight, and especially last year, it kind of came home to roost when you're counting on Noah Brown, who cannot be counted upon. You're counting on Zach Ertz, who shouldn't be counted upon at his age and injury history, although he was remarkably healthy for a season and 2/3 here before that devastating injury right in front of us where we were in Minnesota. But there was not enough on offense. I think there needs to be more talent, especially if you're transitioning to a slightly new system, a new verbiage, a new whatever. You need a couple of easy things just to make you right. We need to look up and go, hey, he's already thrown for 50 yards because he just dumped it off a couple of times and guys made some plays for him. There's an Alec Pierce down the field, or there's a Terry McLaurin winning in tight 3rd and 7 type coverage. That wasn't available to them most of the time. It was Debo gimmick this one way, hope it works, and pray for rain. I think there needs to be something.
And that's part of the context to EPA per dropback going from 6th to 29th. And his rank in CPOE going from 10th to 32nd.
And by the way, that wasn't to absolve him of any.
No,
you're not playing as well. But I think it's all part and parcel, right?
But what I'm saying is, he has been largely, like last year, deservedly above reproach, and we were just kind of in the school of going, all right, we got nothing to talk about with Jayden. Let's talk about everything else. And my point is, they got a lot of things to fix on offense.
Yep.
They've already made a change to the coordinator, change to the play caller. They're changing the running scheme. They've moved on from their offensive line coach, not because of how the O-line played, but some butting of heads in the building from what I was told with Anthony Lynn and some other guys in terms of like run scheme. So they're doing some of those things. They're also going to have Jayden Daniels get back to doing some things sharper and better than he did this past season. And they also need to give him way more talent. There's no doubt about that.